Hey, and good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Hey,
Morning, Marianne. Morning, Justin.
morning.
Thanks for
Morning.
joining me today on our weekly live stream. This is live stream 54, and
Wow.
I know pretty fun. Uh, it's a lot. And today we're doing we have actually a really exciting stream around Data Privacy Day 2021. But before we start talking about Data Privacy Day, just want to say thank you to everyone who likes, subscribes, watches, feedback. It's great just getting people talking about some of the stuff we're doing here, and hopefully we find it value. In case you don't know who we are, we're Valiant Technology. We're based in New York City, but we service clients throughout the United States, and we do this every week, every Thursday, 10:30. We do a live stream topic. We usually follow a theme, and today we have a really great one around Data Privacy Day, and well, you may ask, what's Data Privacy Day? What does it do? And I'm gonna give the background a little bit, and then obviously we'll get deeper into what purpose it serves. So Data Privacy Day is actually next week on Thursday, but we wanted to give everyone a sense of what it is so they can take a look at some of the content. There's going to be some blog posts, some more data posts, but really what the idea behind it is, it started in 2008 in the United States, in Canada, and started being celebrated. But actually, it really commemorates a an event that happened in 1981, and I can say probably I was the only one alive for that when that happened in 1981, and January 28th. So that's why the date.
Just missed it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. You guys weren't. Yeah, I wasn't aware of it, but it happened. I was anyway. It was basically it was the first time there was a legally binding agreement on an international treaty around data privacy. And even back then, 40 years ago, uh, we people recognized that the collection of data and personal information is really uh, a, a very sensitive issue, and one that we should take seriously and address kind of openly and transparently. And really, we want to educate everyone. And so we partner up with a nonprofit that's really engaged in this, and it's the National Cybersecurity Alliance, NCSA. And they're the one who coordinate it. They have a great product, this great messaging education system, and so they work with public-private partnerships, businesses, to raise awareness about sensitive information. Your PIIs, where's everything going, being safe online, educating children and people who may not know some of the risks that are out there. One of our dangers always people just give away their information, and way. I mean, just constantly. The classic saying: if you're not paying for it, you're the product.
Yep.
So it's pretty common, and for us, we think this is such a huge this topic of information of discourse that we should really talk about more often, and that's why we're Data Privacy Day champions. We want people to kind of just really be aware of it, and be it from your social media presence to applications that you're buying for your business to everything you do in between that. So just to kind of get started, Mary and Justin, what's your advice to individuals? Like what just following the NCSA kind of guidelines and their best practices, how should we address this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is to just recognize that your personal information is a currency in itself. Like, you should be valuing it, you should be protecting it. I think a lot of, our applications are built on the fact that sharing your information is a feature, not a bug. But then a lot of even just the ones that you don't think about, you may have a free game. That's stuff that you're giving information to through your
Hmm.
phone, through whatever device you have it downloaded on, websites you visit, things like that. So it's important to know what information you're putting out there and who has access to it.
Right.
Now, this information, even at the very basics, could just be your name, contact information, email. It could be your location or your buying history, things like that. So it's stuff that companies can use to use that data to make more money with it.
Right.
And one thing, like specifically, you can do is keep tabs on what applications you have. It's a good idea to go through how many apps are in your phone, how many apps are on your computer that you're not using anymore, and delete them. Especially, I mean, if you're using them, not that big of a deal because you're getting use out of it. But if you have an old app, an old game, an old, tracker that that you don't use anymore, they're still getting your information, even if you don't open the application usually. So, it's a good idea just to cull that stuff every once in a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, and especially apps on your phone can make use of your location services, which is, pretty intense.
Right. Yeah, it's a track, and always read that, at least that initial, when you install the app and you first log into it and set up, usually, without having to go too deep into the end user license agreement, or what's called the EULA, you can
Yeah.
see what they're doing as the basics. And your phone generally will have an alert saying, "Hey, do you want this thing tracking you even when you're not in the app?"
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, you'll see that on websites a lot too. It'll be like, hey, this website wants to know your location. And while, yeah, I mean, that can provide you with things like if you're going to the website of a hardware store, it might be like, here's the closest one near you. But at the same time, is that really information that they need? I'll just, you know,
Mhm.
I can find that out on my own. I don't need you to be like, hey, guess what?
right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, like, and also there's certain apps that have no apparent reason why that app would have need for your location
Yeah.
data.
Mhm.
Like, and those are the ones you always get a question like, why are they asking my location?
Yeah, why do they need to know that? And it could just be, it could be as simple as I want to advertise to what people in your region tend to like,
Right.
or it could just be that again, that information is currency. They could just resell it. So yeah, it's important just to keep track of that stuff. We do recommend about once a month just taking a look through your tablet, your computer, your phone, and give it a little bit of a sweep and get rid of what you don't need. I mean, it's going to be better for your performance as well as your
Mhm.
privacy. So.
Exactly. This the kind of that kind of all those linked apps and
Yep.
some memory. One thing that so this is so in terms of like advice for businesses, how does a business deal with this? Like, this is where we spend a lot of obviously our effort and time.
Yeah.
And what's the best way to on both sides of the aisle, right? So, um,
Yeah. Well,
the
so yeah, as a business, you have more of a responsibility to the data that you are collecting, and like the phrase, if you collect it, protect it, kind of like don't copy that floppy. It's just a nice easy way to remember. Yeah, that. Well, yeah,
That was
if you
also a little
collect it,
before my
protect it.
time.
Easy way to remember. And I don't know, like we talked about from the other end how apps and services collect information, but as a business, you collect information as well too. You have information on your clients, and sometimes it's as simple as name, address, phone number, but that information is PII, and you want to, with that info, you want to protect it. You want to review, how you're treating that data on a regular basis as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah, collect it. You want to put some level of protection around it. That can include things like, storing it in a secure way, or classifying data in a certain way, or at least keeping track of what you have, and that can help avoid problems down the line if something were to happen. A great way to get in the habit of doing this, and a great way to ensure this, is to adopt a privacy framework. There are a number of organizations that put together what, for different industries or for different groups, a guideline for business operations, and part of that includes cybersecurity. We work a lot with NIST and the cybersecurity framework as a standard. It's a good, general standard for most businesses.
Mhm.
Uh, Especially if you're in a professional services type environment and less worried about things like manufacturing and stuff like that. It focuses more on business practice, and it's a great way to make sure, at least to see where you're at and how you measure up against things that you can be doing to protect the data that you're collecting, or protect the data that you have.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that in mind too, I running a an assessment of your data and of your environment is particularly important, again, to get that understanding. So you use the framework that you've got as a guideline, and then you compare and see how you stack up against that. You don't necessarily need to be 100% across the board, but at least understand things like how you're collecting data, how you're storing that data, how you're protecting it, what privacy laws or regulations apply to you. And if you're collecting data on European citizens, you have GDPR. If you're doing
Mhm.
business in New York, you have Shield. And there are
We talked
others.
about that a bunch last week, that it's not even just
Correct.
what you're doing business with, but it's what your clients are doing business with and what your vendors are doing business with.
Right.
So chances are you are,
There's some.
those apply to you as well, even if you don't think you
Yeah.
do. They do.
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about both New York and California have fairly robust laws on the books here, and that's both
Exactly.
sides of the country, and they're the two largest economies
So,
of the states,
Yeah.
in
I
the United
try not to
States.
do work with New York.
Yeah,
yeah.
or California for that
Yeah,
matter.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
it's
very
only a
much
matter of time before that becomes a national
correct.
absolutely. Yeah.
guideline.
So
So,
and and I think that if it, by knowing what you have, by really kind of understanding the laws and the regulations, and you can start building a
Mhm.
transparent and
mhm,
open policy with your clients and your employees, your staff.
mhm,
Yeah.
What happens to this data? Where does it go? And just disclose it. I mean, and I think that goes into
mhm.
all different pieces of the
Yeah,
of this puzzle here.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Being able to say to your customers, this is how we treat your data, this is how we protect it, and this is what we do, and this is what we do in the event of a breach. Even all of those things, being able to say that up front helps build that trust that you want from your clients, from your customers when they're giving you their information, when they're giving you their business.
Yeah.
Uh, and the last piece that goes into it, something that sometimes gets overlooked, is making sure that you examine what your partners and vendors are doing as well. It's great if you build this security practice, but if you then take all of this data and everything that you have and you give it to a subcontractor or to
Mhm.
someone else to do work with, and they have none of these things, it from your customer's perspective, you're still the one that they've entrusted with their data, and if something happens, it leads back to you. So you want to make sure that you review things like review what the EULAs are, review what the
Mhm.
policies are, review how excuse me, how organizations that you work with treat data. And going back to what you said earlier, if you're if you're not paying for it, you're probably the product. The
Yeah.
same thing is true for free services. You do have to be careful that what kind of data is being collected out of this, and am I putting data that is more than just my own in there.
Sure. Well, it's also good to know, just like, I mean, we talked about applications on your personal phone, but applications that you're using at work, even if you are paying for them, they're collecting data.
Mhm,
Chances are, I mean, they're not going to be using it the same as a free application, but so it's good to at least know, like, look at that user
mhm,
license agreement and you can see, like, oh, they have this information, but they're not selling it, things like that. It's good to,
right.
yeah.
I think that take it one step further, when you and send Justin, and is that downstream effect, right?
yeah.
Like you want to know, you want to have some idea of the chain of privacy or custody of this data as it kind of flows. And I think he starts out login and how it's shared, and and
Mhm.
how many businesses have data in free services when the businesses don't know that it's there. The customer who may think that things are in secure locations, it's out on in a public
Mhm,
and unsecured manner. So
Mhm.
it goes to an even deeper
mhm.
kind of like chain of custody situation here. So
Yeah,
there's
and that's
so many layers to it.
when you see a lot of these data breaches that occur, that's usually the what has happened, is that it's less likely. I mean, obviously, we saw examples of state-sponsored data breaches with solar winds and those issues. But most of the time, when you get those alerts that say something like, "Hey, your username and password showed up in a data dump, or your contact information showed up here," it's not because somebody targeted a specific place. It's because somebody was just seeing what they could scrape, found some data that was stored in some place that was insecure,
Yeah.
and follow the chain back. It goes to somebody uh, trusted a company with their data who then trusted somebody else who trusted somebody else, and somewhere along those lines that trust was misplaced. So
Something broke. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
there's
This downstream third party effect, and it just kind of
Mhm.
amplifies. And the way that the the laws are written, it's very easy for people to evade any kind of responsibility or accountability for this data. But
Yeah.
that's changing, and
Mhm.
that's what makes it really
Yeah.
important.
And that's what
So
we're seeing with things
yeah,
like the SHIELD Act, like GDPR, like the
Mhm.
right,
California Consumer Privacy Act, and if there's a national one, is exactly that: is to put some protections in place. And the flip side of that is, you'll be required to,
As a business, you're
yeah,
responsible for that as well. Yes.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah. So it's great, and it's also work, which
yeah,
is you know.
exactly, and it's got to come by. So, all right, this is great, and it's so much information. It's such an overwhelming topic. It's so much. So,
Yeah.
what can you do? What? And we have some great resources from National Cybersecurity Alliance, and we spent our time today just talking about this. Is privacy important? So what are the things? So one of the things that we think is really important is just really honestly getting involved in it and being really aware of it, and take that kind of time to take stock, and definitely check out the NCSA's resources.
mhm,
Yeah.
They have so much information on it. I go back to it. I refer to it fairly frequently because it's a great way, instead of having to reinvent the wheel, to explain things, especially at various different stages of at its very low level to a very high level. So it's good. And I think the other thing that's really important is start with people as a data privacy champion. Like, I spend a lot of time with my kids and people I know, explaining them what's happened here, what where their data is going, why their data is important. Like, hey, that free game, as Marianne said, may be collecting data on you. And when
Mhm.
you're sitting there on your iPhone, it's just generating profiles of
mhm.
who you are.
Yep.
And that's not necessarily ideal in many ways.
Well, and also you need to know like how that's going to be used and what that means for you. So.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the uh, one of the phrases there is your data is like currency, treat it like money, and that
Yeah.
means that in
Yeah.
some cases you are okay exchanging it for things you want, and in other cases you're not.
Yeah.
And it's about being informed so that you can make that decision responsibly, as opposed to just trusting that it's going to be fine. And
Mhm.
that's where bad things happen.
Exactly. It's complacency is a dangerous place to operate from in this sector right here.
Mhm.
So, um, once again, if you're a business owner, take a look at what your business is doing with the data and what applications you're using, and
Yeah.
some of the content that's put together. I think is really useful and make you aware, and to give it to your staff and like get them involved and just become champions for
Yeah.
this.
And
And
I will always champion training, which is really important because you can be aware and you can have a policy in place that says personal information identifiers need to
mhm,
be protected. But if your staff doesn't know what those
right,
are, it's really important that they are aware as well, so that they
ex-
can follow your policies.
exactly. A policy that's unenforced is worse than no policy at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really important. And if you're ready to show your support, become a data privacy data champion. As simple as your awareness and your stance and how you feel. It's free. Check out the site. We have the link here. We'll have it in our a blog post that have all this information in it. And I think it's really useful. And just as a next step, and it could fit into your overall cybersecurity policies and your stance as a company, or as an individual as well.
Mhm.
So really great stuff. Mary and Justin, anything else you think we need to go over? This is so much here, but
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I think one thing is that we split the time between personal and business, but just keep in mind that one, privacy leak can lead to another.
right,
They're not always separate. I mean, people make up a business. So,
Yep.
don't just
exactly.
focus on one. You really need to think about both.
Excellent, excellent point. It's
Yeah.
the line is very blurred
Hmm.
between your personal life and business life. It's not nearly what it used to be years ago. So many things are interconnected.
I mean,
Um,
be like my office.
I'm in our office today, and it's unusual and it's quite exciting. But anyway, I think that I think there's a lot of information here. There's some great content on the site. I think that would be really helpful. Um, Once again, we love comments. Please leave comments. Please send us any suggestions, thoughts, things you want us to cover. We're on social: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. The usual kind of locations. We we use a lot of that feedback to create tips, tutorials, and to develop our content. And actually, our next one is kind of wrap up our compliance kind of cycle through January. We have building a roadmap to compliance, kind of it's kind of like this a step-by-step review of all the pieces necessary to get started on a comprehensive compliance process. And and it was going to be an amazing thank you, Matt. We have an amazing checklist that's going to be available for the compliance to help you get started and give you a place. We want to avoid that blank sheet of paper problem that always that I know myself. He's like, how do I get started with compliance? Here it is. We have some really great pieces here, so check it out. It's going to be on, and it's going to be all in the blog post as well. Jasmine, anything else today?
I think we covered it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and hope to speak to you soon. Can't wait to talk to you all next week. Stay safe and have a great day. Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.